Toen realiseerde hij zich dat de rivier toch maar een oever had waarop het stond en naar de verte keek, waarin een beeld uit vroegere dagen langzaam maar zeker verdwenen was, zodat er toekomst nog verleden was, verlangen niet en eindelijk geen verdriet.
The wasps are our huts, activated by our surrounding salvation. Sabbath church will send the flowers to the night, scramble to the target, to the indestructible voices drawing in milk of time. Separated by the mountains of Judah, ingredients of love, people departed, dreams smoked in vanity, wrapped in blue dyed, walking in the dark, recordings of mass destruction, times of light. The first raver of the ragged day arrived, and was awakened, and so was the air breeze of the walking sun. Good evening, we are messengers of the sun from the Electric Dog Station Collective. This is the collapse of the universe. What is called the triumph of the drive movement. The night of the 18th of May, I answered the phone. A boy and a painter from a lost century asked me questions. Where is the name of expression? Where is the name of your counterculture? Where is the future? Where is your counterculture? Where are your concerns and your worries? Where are the prophets? Where are the artists? Where are the Lumumbas and the Albert Camus? Where is Jean-Michel Basquiat? Are you rejected by the disciplines of your society? Are you rejected, disciplined, assimilated, defecated, suffocated, devastated, annihilated, scramble the target of the indestructible voices who draw on milk of time, separated in the mountains of Judah.
ये मौजज़ा भी मोहब्बत कभी दिखाए मुझे संग तुझसे गिरे और जख्म आए मुझे
Are you afraid of this decolonial symposium? Are you afraid of the image of Lawrence Ferlinghetti? Are you afraid of Jack Kerouac? Are you afraid of Patti Smith and Amiri Baraka? Are you afraid of Allen Ginsberg? Are you afraid of Simon Winkenoch and Jim Morrison and New Jerusalem? Are you afraid of social liberation for no organized power? Are you really afraid? I can do anything for you because it's like you don't exist.
इब्ने मरियम हुआ करे कोई इब्ने मरियम हुआ करे कोई मेरे दुख की दवा करे कोई इब्ने मरियम हुआ करे कोई मेरे दुख की दवा करे कोई
This one is called The Light of Mumbai. Surasa tested the intelligence while killing Hanumana. Hanumana! Hanumana! It's a matter of time. He searched paradise locations. He meets Rama. Hanumana has no way to go to Sita. His departure represented time. Time lost. Time before immaculate time.
It was the 1st of June of 1995. The club just opened. There was miscommunication between the bouncers, miscommunication between the nomadic ravers, miscommunication between the jungle warriors and prophet groove rider, miscommunication before the ravers enter the club. Are you going to dance? Are you going to dance? Are you going to move? Are you going to give a space to the freaking fascist? The translucent space was closed by choreographers. I remember the shooting of the space. I remember the monitor everywhere, the blood in the bathroom, the light in the space. There were people who long don't exist. There were gabbers, jungleists, punks, goths, caters, metalheads, deadheads, nirvana heads, grungers, ravers, and there was limbo. Where are you right now? Where are you right now? Thank you. We are messages of the song. We are glad to be here right now. Invited by Ananya and by Ari. This is the first time we go back to the roots, to the 90s when I come to the Netherlands, where everything was here, squats, punk, rave, jungle, house, queer house. Those times are nostalgia right now, when everything seems so gentrified. Most of the performances we've been doing this year, Sonsbeek, last year, Havana Biennial, are being based on the idea of the origins, of the African origins, and the idea of my own DNA from Latin America. But we wanted to set the course for a new ambition, which is proclaim the time of space that we miss, that nostalgia for a time was long gone, and it seems now like an Afrofuturistic time that we hope comes before. So in this day, just before, after Diwali, we promise you that the light we share, it's the light who will win. Darkness, it will not win the path. Thank you. Namaste.
Welcome, everyone. Such a pleasure to see everybody here gathered today. Such an astonishing, beautiful, unusual, I think actually not unusual, impossible encounter which has been made possible by our friends here. And you gathered here with us are obviously part of the energy.
Absolutely.
So welcome again, and thank you again to all of you who have given yourselves already to us. This is just the start of the evening.
Exactly.
And I am Ananya, my collaborator, Ari Gautier, who is also the co-founder with me of the Thinnai Creole, and we welcome you on our Thinnai Creole. So, Ari, a few words from you.
All of our friends are sitting on an archipelago of thinnai. You know, each and everybody has his own thinnai. It's not only our thinnai. So thinnai, for people who don't know, it's a Tamil word for architectural element which is attached to every traditional house in Tamil Nadu. And I'm coming from Pondicherry, and the thinnai is a place where people from the family, they sit in the evening and chit-chat, or even passerbys can sit because of the long journey they are taking. They can sit for a while, have a glass of water from the people of the house. And it's also a place where you can just see the world passing in front of you.
We have actually, I think all of us made a long journey through this past year. And indeed, the Thinnai Creole project is part of that journey, because Ari and I never met each other. We only knew each other virtually. We were supposed to meet in March 2020, just as the pandemic closed the doors for everybody.
Actually, you should say them that Ananya has been reading my book. My last book is called
the Thinnai.
Le Thinnai in French, and which is translated now into English. So Ananya came to know about this book. She got interested because she was looking for some
Literature from Pondicherry.
Pondicherry.
Yeah.
So she found me, she found the book, and the entire project started from there.
Well, the entire project actually, projects don't start like that. It was
No,
more
of
a
course not.
conversation, a discussion, realization of shared interests. And then as an academic, I guess my mind was working only in academic ways. I was like, let's do a workshop in Paris. Let's bring Ari and my colleagues in Paris, my students. So that was what was planned for March 2020, and it never happened. And when that never happened, in that period where nobody knew where we were going, you know, as human beings, how we were going to ever connect with each other again, Ari reached out and said, actually, my book is called The Thinnai, and it's about the thinnai. Let's do a virtual thinnai. So I said, well, okay, but I work with the idea of Kreyol as a way to connect across the world. And the reason I was connecting with Ari was also because of that idea of Kreyol, which was present in his book, The Thinnai. Yeah. So we made it The Thinnai Kreyol. And it was a total experiment, a total shot in the dark. It kept us going through the pandemic. It's a virtual platform. We convened virtually. And we brought our existing friends into this gradually growing community. And many of them came on this virtual thinnai to share their talents and their vision of the world with us, such as Antonio, such as Raj, and also Shailesh, who is around, and he will join us soon. So these are all our friends who are living in the Netherlands. So when we had the opportunity from another friend of ours, Francio Guadalupe, and Evie Evans of Frame of Framed, to bring the Thinnai Kreyol to the Netherlands, of course we wanted to share it with the friends who live here, but who had already been virtually on the Thinnai with us. So this is the genesis and the rationale for the program today. And at this point, I think I will hand the word to Francio and Evie. And please, do tell everybody a little bit about how we all came to be here today.
Thank you, Ananya and Ari, for welcoming us. And thank you, Antonio, for starting the evening off. I would just, first of all, like to welcome everyone to Frame of Framed. You're currently sitting in the Court for Intergenerational Climate Crimes, which is a project by Rada de Souza and Jonas Staal. And it's really wonderful to have a thinnai here instead of a court case. So it's nice to come together and discuss the possibilities of coming together in an intergenerational and an interspecies way. So welcome. And we also have another exhibition, Power Play Deals All Over by the collective We Sell Reality upstairs, which we can look at later after our evening together. And as Ananya already mentioned, it was really, it's been a difficult year, I think, for everyone, a couple of years, and we're still going through it, so we really should celebrate these moments that we can come together. And it's wonderful to finally have everyone in the same physical space, not just a virtual space, which is also wonderful and has its benefits. But this has been a really lovely project to work on with everyone. And so I thought it would be nice to start the evening with thank yous. Thank you to Ananya, Ari, Francio, Yaya, everyone at the KITLV, and also Antonio, Raj and his musicians as well joining us, and Shailesh, who will be performing, and of course Antonio's dancers. So thank you to everyone for joining, and I'm very excited, looking forward to the rest of the evening and what discussions we can have.
Good evening, everyone. I'm going to be brief because this room, I realize, is filled with lots of energy. It's filled with the energy, I think, of all these living creatures that have died out, that are extinguished right now. So I think, given the fact that we're living in a time of Glasgow, that people have walked today, we first have to start by giving thanks to all of these animals because they're here with us. I think what I also feel is the spirits, the ancestors, people from India, Africa, Europe, and the Caribbean that are here right now. Those people that sought to find a way of living a decent life. And I think what creolization is about, it's about recognizing that every door that you try to close culturally will always be a bridge towards the other. We are always bleeding into one another. And creolization, to me, is about that. And its link is with commensality, eating together. Because creolization was the attempt to eat together, the attempt to break bread together with the animal life, plant life, and what we call human life. Now, I'm very happy that Ananya and Ari were willing to join with the Royal Institute of Southeast Asian and Caribbean Studies and with Framed to actually offer the thinnai Kreyol to you. And today it's called Kreyol Warung. And it already shows the opening, because the Kreyol reminds us that India is inhabited by many different presences of different parts of the world. But vice versa, the Kreyol reminds us that India inhabits all kinds of creolized spaces. And the Warung reminds us that both are inhabited by the Indonesian archipelago. And I think this recognition is a recognition we need to nurture these days, because it will either be creolization or forms of barbarism and extinction, and that we have to stand up against. So thank you for being here.
So since Francois just mentioned the word creolization, because you came with that idea of Creole Indias, you're working on it. Yeah. And when we started this thinnai Creole, I said, thinnai is mine, but you can come and sit on my thinnai with your Creole Indias. And when people talk about creolization, we talk about only the plantation model, but we don't think other way. So it will be nice if you could explain how you came with that idea of Creole Indias.
Yeah, maybe a few words, so that also we can perhaps understand how this concept, which kind of came out of my academic writing, is now illuminated by the performances that we are experiencing now and the energies that are circulating because of the performances. So certainly at a certain point in my life, I was really immersed and learning about the orishas that you mentioned, invoked, and we remember the orishas. I started doing Cuban salsa actually, and when you do anything Cuban, you always are introduced to the orishas. This may be a marketing ploy, it may be something very strategic, but actually it can also open the doors. So I learned about the orishas through learning how to dance salsa in the Cuban style, and they really never left me, and I started getting quite amazed by this whole cosmogony, which was surreptitiously entering all our worlds through dance, which was social dance. But the dance was not social, it was also spiritual and sacred. So this commingling already made me start thinking about how different presences, which we kind of academically often think are separate, were even cohabiting in our own body when I was dancing these dance styles and learning about them. So from there came this awakening interest that the academic word to think about these processes may be creolization, but can we stretch it? Can we think about such processes happening in that part of the world which I am from, which is India, very located in India. My ancestors never left to go anywhere, unlike the ancestors, say, of Raj or Shailesh. Raj's ancestors and Shailesh's ancestors left the port of Calcutta. And my ancestors, Bornita's ancestors, my friend Bornita's there, they remained and were part of the process of making Calcutta the city it was by remaining there, whereas their ancestors were participating in the project by leaving. This for me was very fascinating and also very emotional to connect with people like and I call them now my port brothers. You see, we have the concept of Jahaji Bhai and Jahaji Behan, which is the brotherhood of the ships that was created when people were forced to be on the ships together. But what about the port, which also created certain ruptures, but those ruptures also made our history through ruptures. So for me, that was thinking of India through these ruptures, which are also creolizing, and thinking of a web of connections linking parts of India to each other as well as to the islands and the coasts like Suriname, where people left, the Guyana. And so I really started thinking of Creole Indias as a way to rethink even my own self as an Indian person. And luckily I met someone along the way, you, Ari, whose philosophy or way of being in the world really echoed with mine. And it made sense to me that you came from French India, and I am a part of British India, so to speak. What does all this mean even, you know? So here we are all together.
But I think what was important, what our common understanding is to make the thinnai Kreyol as a place of resistance.
Yeah.
You know, resisting against a kind of cultural hegemony and resisting against the new idea of what India as a state is becoming. So through creolization, it's exactly what we want to show. There is no something called pure, the purity. We are against purity.
Yeah.
So
in fact, we celebrate the so-called impurity.
Yeah,
because
exactly.
It is so-called because what is even pure and impure? You know, I prefer to think of all of us together like we are on this thinnai, which is also not as a contiguous space, but a connection of non-contiguous spaces. And that's why this framed topography suits us beautifully. This is all, of course, beautiful coincidences. We have never seen frame of frame till today. Well, nobody was leaving a
and
screen.
when we got there, we understood there was so many thinnais.
Yeah, so this has worked amazingly to translate spatially what we want to do, what we feel we are doing. We are not into, let us have a new manifesto for a solid mass of commonalities. Rather, we are celebrating our differences and divergences, and the way these beautiful clothes that Antonio has created together with your colleague. Antonio, tell us a little bit about the clothes, because this is celebrating a sort of set of differences, but we're all wearing different things which are also a bit similar. So
Yeah, we can talk about Yarak, Cindy Yarak for hours.
yes.
Yeah, I'm from Panama,
You have 5
and
minutes.
yeah, as Panamanian, there is a huge Indian community in Panama, and a huge Muslim Indian community as well. So I grew up between that. So I grew up between Orishis, Saris, and in my school there were people from all sorts of backgrounds. So just like in Suriname. So I've been Creole all my life, and my DNA is also a crossing path. First, what we did years ago is that we make music with the DNA. We scrambled the DNA sequence, and we got it from a university, part of a project for National Geographic, and then that same sequence we give to a barrel organ maker. The barrel organ maker stencil the sequence, which is lines and borders, and he makes a music who sounds like ting, pong, ping, ting, ting, tung, tang. That music we used for the Havana Biennial, where we did a huge project, a huge performance. Later on, when we have the Sharing Foundation with the Textile Factoria, there's an organization here run by an Hindustani Dutch woman, an academic, just like you guys. She made the connection with Gujarat, because the Netherlands and India have a connection who goes back hundreds of years on the time of the VOC. What happened is that the Dutch handlers used to go to India to make textiles. And here, in all the Kleder regios here, as Pakkenburg, Ork, and Terschelling, and all these little cities, people used to wear certain sort of very interesting clothes, and a lot of these clothes they have sint, and they have also block prints. So we were looking at the creolization of time, why people here was wearing clothes were Indian. And then in India, they were also exoticizing clothes or patterns who would look European, but nothing, everything was Creole. So we entered Gujarat, we entered Ajakpur, that's in the north of India. And in that Sindhi community, they all come from the region of Pakistan before the division. And as you know now, the whole history of division there is now with Modi, with the Hindustani community, resistance to the Muslim community. There is a lot of problems in that. So the block printing have the DNA that we make for a barrel organ. And it's made on indigo. And indigo, it was a way for the Dutch to handle in the times of cotton and sugar and coffee in Suriname and in different plantations in the Caribbean. So the indigo was a handle, was a way of dyeing, but it was money printed. So for us, the way of working with indigo and working with block printing is very so much connected to identity and the history of creolization. So we make performances, we make banners, we make installations, multimedia, video projects with Jacob. So we are a whole team of people at the Atelier, at the Project Electric Dust Station. So it's all about this sort of creolization of the textile, because the textile tells many histories of identity, many histories of creolization. You're wearing something who looks like a sari. Ari is wearing something that we call afrimono, which is a mix between African bourbon and kimono, and I'm wearing something you could call kilt mono, because it's like a kimono with a kilt. Yeah, and over the kilt we can talk a lot, because the Scottish also wear, they have in Panama colonies. It's a long history, but it's all this history of a creolization.
That's fantastic, because it's, thank you for explaining. I hope everybody got these complex layers, and also the translation of sound into pattern, but that is also a translation of the text, of the DNA itself. So where is originality? Where is the authentic me in all this, And then we can wear it and share the joy of wearing these amazing outfits. So what you really are doing is somehow making visible and tactile on our bodies these layered histories, which are on the one hand deeply histories of oppression and deracination and violence, but something creative also came out of all that, and that's sort of materializing in these clothes. So I think we are really happy to experience these. Finally, I've been hearing about these textiles, seeing different, videos
but
of
actually,
them, but not to wear them.
You remember, I'm writing about the indigo in my book, in my novel. And then also the French, when they came to Pondicherry, they came not for spices, as people might think, but they came for textiles,
yes.
and they came for indigo. And the indigo of Pondicherry is very special because the technique or the elements that the local people were using, they were from barks, leaves, and different type of sand also. But what was the most important is the water from the Ariangupam River, which was from Ariangupam River, but comes from Ojugare, means a little bit further, because that water contained some kind of chemical element which made the indigo of Pondicherry very special. And I'm so happy to wear it today because I've never worn indigo in my life. So thank you, Antonio.
But Antonio also mentioned Suriname. So what we are also, if you want to think about, a kind of theory of creolization that I'm trying to develop in my academic work, but which also connected very well with your book and with all our friends here, and that's why we are drawn together, is the idea that the Atlantic and the Indian Ocean worlds are very connected. And indigo is a good example of it, but also here that we have our friends who trace their paths back to India through Suriname. So we have Raj here, and Abi, and Shailesh, who are here because their ancestors were in Suriname. And you mentioned Suriname as part of this web of textile connections, which are actually deeply involved also in the slave trade, So there are so many layers which are both painful and yet generative of newness that we want to acknowledge here. And I am wondering if it's a moment to give the floor to Raj. What do you think?
How we have been crimped by them and taken to Suriname, contract laborer, crossing over 7 seas, promised a new land. How we have been taken crimped by them and taken to Suriname. Clothing, food, jewelry, all hope bound in talks. With the blessing of God Rama in our hands, depending on strangers on the water, with some regret and pain in the heart. Maybe better times will come now, after years of waiting. We too get some warmth of the sun. After years of waiting, we too get some warmth of the sun. सात समुंदर पार कराई के सात समुंदर पार कराई के एक नवा देश के सपना दिखाई के कैसे हमके भर माई के कैसे सात समुंदर पार कराएंगे कपड़ा लत्ता खर्चा गहिना गठरी में बांध के सब आसा कपड़ा लत्ता खर्चा गहिना गठरी में बांध के सब आसा कृपा श्री राम के दूसर के सहारा पानी पे कभी दिल घबराए थोड़ा पछताए शायद तब जाए के दिन बढ़िया आए आज सूरज के कुछ हमके भी भाग में मिली बरसन तरसाई के Gamadani zani ni zani zani da 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 ni zani da 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 ga ma ga re zani zani za ga ma ma ga kapura जहाज पे रिश्ता नाता तो बन ही जा 2-3 महीना जहाज पे रिश्ता नाता तो बन ही जा कंत्राक जोगाई के थैली एक एक विचार दिमाग में आए उदेश में कैसन लोग भेटाए खेती बाड़ी बढ़िया सैरा 5 बरिस कस के कमाई के लौटब गांव अपन पैसा जमाई के 7 समुंदर पार कराई के कुछ दिन सरनाम में रह के भाई धीरे धीरे आदत पड़ जाए अब इतना दिन मेहनत करके सब छोड़ छाड़ वापस के जाए जो बोले अब ही ये रह जाए जो बोले अब ही ये रह जाए सरकार के बल पे खेत मिल जाए मन के कोना में ही सपना बकी रह गए एक दिन गाँव अपन जाएगी
That's mine. Thank you, Raj. This was very moving. This,
Thank you, Avi.
beautiful. Yeah, and Avi, of course. So, yeah, so this is what thinnai creole is about.
Yes, maybe for those who didn't understand the lyrics, a short, I mean, obviously it cannot be anything more than a paraphrase because...
I have no idea.
Yeah, well,
I don't understand.
The language is very sweet to us because it's not Hindi as such.
Oh, that was not Hindi.
Well, it's Sarnami Bhojpuri.
Oh, right. Okay. So,
It's very close to Bengali. And so it really reminds us of that geographical shading of the area of Bihar into Bengal, which is exactly why the ancestors of yours were taken from that part through Calcutta, which is in Bengal. So that is a corridor. And language also flows in a corridor. This is also, in a way, creolization. The language that the song is in is much, there are some inflections closer to Bengali than the Hindi that you would hear, spoken, say, nationally. So it's a very beautiful connection, again, that as a Bengali person one can have to the Caribbean, to hear that language. What the song was about was this very common sense of, it's a trope, 7, you cross 7 seas in fairy tales and folk tales. If you have to go big distance, you cross 7 seas. But of course, when people are actually crossing the oceans, the Kala Pani, the Pagal Samundar, all these spaces, then you are enacting that folk tale in a very different way. Your modernity is entering into that folk tale, or the folk tale is entering modernity. So the 7 seas is what the song tells us. The person singing is remembering the 7 seas, is also telling us how they made a place like Suriname their own by labor, by working with their hands, their sweat, their toil, thinking that in 5 years' time they're going to go back. But finally, they're like, well, maybe we should just stay here because this is the space that, you built with your hands, those fields. But the song ended with this little feeling that, but in the corner of my heart, there's this dream or hope of there, which is going back, staying here, which is home. The song just ends with that. And so it's really moving because I think it answers to many of our conditions today about where do we belong and what do we make of a place that is our own. So maybe we should ask Raj to say a few words about this, or we have Shailesh already in the mix. You don't have to say it. Let's just enjoy it.
Sutara balam va Chatar sutara balam va Chatara sutara balam va Chatara sutara Tara sutara balam va Le ho kanaiya Chatara sutara balam va Bahut dinana mein milana bhailava Bahut dinana mein dinana mein milana bhailava Bahut dinana mein milana bhailava Gaye ab hora Chatara sutara balam va Sa re mama re sa re re sa da sa re ma pa da pa ma re sa Sa re ma pa da sa da pa ma re sa Sa pa ma da ba ma re sa Da sa re ma pa 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 da da sa re re da da sa re ma pa da da sa re re sa da ma pa da sa re ma pa da re ma pa da sa
guys just decided to clean up today. Simply. First Antonio, now you guys. This is too much. We didn't expect this.
Well, we didn't know anything of anything, what our performers are going to do. Everything is spontaneous. We just thank everybody. We thank all of you for giving us so much. Because they just kept telling us mysteriously they were preparing something.
I was not part of that.
He wasn't even part of the preparation. So this is another hallmark of the world of creolization, the modus operandi, modus vivendi of creolization, improvisation. When we are together and there's a critical mass of energy and will and feeling, stuff happens, you know. And then I'm sure, I hope, it was all our energies that also enabled the performance to move in the way it did. Thank you, all of you. I mean, I'm just so touched and moved. Okay, all right.
That's what we also like to do on the thinnai, because thinnai, even though it's not a rigid place, it's a kind of very, very flexible. We do whatever we want on the thinnai. Nothing is prepared. We have some skeleton, some structure, but other than that, everything goes jazz. It's freestyle. We don't know what's going to happen, what we're going to say. This is how we work. We've been working for almost 2 years now. It was difficult for me in the beginning to make Ananya sit on a thinnai because she doesn't know what the thinnai looks like. She doesn't know how to sit, the body language. And slowly, teaching to a teacher how to sit on a thinnai.
There was another thing about sitting on the thinnai. I mean, we were virtual, right? So again, as somebody who deals with words, because I'm a literary scholar in my training, the idea of sitting on a virtual thinnai, I used to think that Ari was using it metaphorically when he would say things like, let's sit on the thinnai. I mean, we were after all only on screens, but gradually I realized that as a writer, maybe for him, this idea of sitting on a thinnai has a reality. It doesn't matter whether it's a virtual thinnai, a real thinnai, or whatever real is. And so I accepted that, yeah, we all sit on a thinnai, we jump on a thinnai, and of course now as we are really doing it, we also have friends in the audience who work on this crossover. Sandra is here, Sandra Ponzadesi. She's just concluded a big project with her team on digital worlds and how people bring emotions and traffic between the digital and the so-called, what is the real anymore. But I think I'm going to take a moment now to formally introduce the people whom you saw and felt in the second, what has now become the second half of the program, evidently. So we heard Raj in the beginning and Avi with giving support to and combining forces with Antonio. And we've heard from Antonio about where he is entering the space of creolization from. And of course, we have Shailesh here, a wonderful dancer, somebody whom I know for many years now, and in a way, who also opened the door to Raj. In a way, I got to know Raj through Shailesh. So Shailesh and Raj, maybe, and Avi, you can tell us a little bit about yourselves so that people know. And then we have about 10 minutes, I think, to wrap the conversation up, to then move up to the space of actual commensality. But before we go there, let's have a little conversation between our guests here. And yeah, Raj, take this. Oh, you have your own mic. Oh, you don't have it anymore? You can use mine. Avi, please join us.
Well, good evening, friends. Nice to be here. I enjoyed my performance, as I always do. Thanks for the invitation, guys. Happy to see you again. I'm a musician, singer-songwriter, composer in Sarnami, Hindustani music, the Bhojpuri language. It's also in Hindi and Urdu. I'm a composer, arranger, teacher, performer. I do sometimes some movements only exclusively for Shailesh. So we fixed that on the contract. So I'm doing this for the last 30 years now. And I think I will be needing some 30 years more to achieve what I want to achieve. So still a long way to go, but I'm enjoying the journey.
Thank you, Raj. I first saw Raj perform, I think it was The Hague, when you did Blood in a church. Blood in a church. Shailesh was choreographing. You were not dancing. You just choreographed the two dancers who were brothers, actually, of Angolan origin. And Shailesh was choreographing this very moving piece, which was set in a church, because that was part of what the project was about. And Raj was singing, and Raj appeared from the darkness of the church, and there was a tanpura involved, and a stick with which Raj was beating the tanpura at the end. And for me, it was a bit of a shocking moment today when you put your foot on the tabla. I just died, because again, from India, you just don't do certain things. But why don't we do them? And why is Raj daring to do them?
It's not true. What you're saying, it's not true.
So somebody has fooled me into thinking that we cannot put our foot on the tabla. Yeah, that somebody is a certain kind of idea.
Only one group of people does.
Tell us more about that.
Only one group of people do the things you don't expect,
Yes.
and do the opposite thing.
Yes.
These are the aghoris.
Yes.
We've seen the play, or the dance production of Shailesh Bahoran. So the aghoris, they piss on the statue of Shiva.
So we are all Aghoris.
Yeah, I mean, not Ananya, because she was shocked.
No, I'm Aghori now.
Oh,
You make me, and I'm in the process, a continuous process of becoming Aghori. And I can only do that in the company of those who are already on that journey further on than me. It is true. Obviously, when I look back, I think I must have had, yes, this very bourgeois upbringing in India, that when I see the tabla and somebody's foot is on the, I feel, I can't, oh my God, what is going on, Because this is a sign of disrespect. The Aghori, on the other hand, coming from that same space of India, is reversing in this, again, Rabelaisian way, subverting, what is support, but maybe giving another kind of respect in that way, another form of relation.
Actually, the thing is, the aghoris, they are living the highest form of spirituality, which is part of our culture. And the highest form of spirituality is the non-dualism, the Advaita, no dualism. That means, if you want to know what non-dualism is, then listen to the words of Jesus Christ. He said, do not judge. But how can you not be judging when you see the difference? So you can only come to that state when you don't see any difference anymore. So that is the Advaita. That's the higher consciousness. There's a certain space where you meet yourself in Advaita, in non-dualism. So then you see, but you don't watch.
Mm-hmm. I know that you have a particular interest in the Aghori figure.
I've been living with them for a while.
Do you? Maybe you and Shailesh.
No, Shailesh can do it.
And Shailesh has done this, the piece that you created, which Raj alluded to, also called Aghori. So this is connecting these people are all Aghoris around me.
We are Aghori Babas.
I mean, I can only admire them. Maybe one day I could get closer to that level. Good evening, everyone. My name is Shailesh Bahoran. Born in Suriname, grew up here in the Netherlands. Started dancing in the city malls of Utrecht when I was 15 years old. From there, somehow got in a space of getting on stages in all different types and ways. That made me further to choreographing, making my own work, together with my crew, now company, since 1998, Illusionary Rockers Company, IRC. We are getting our new space. We just got our key to our new space in Utrecht, so now I finally have my own studio. Yeah, so that's a big step. Thank you, thank you. Yeah, and I mean, let me just tell a little bit about the RSC. We try to really focus on talent development on different stages and different levels. So on educational level, inspiring level, getting people to dance, but also in different steps in their career, to say so. So first, from a hip-hop background coming, it's going for the battles, trying to win battles, then try to make showcases. From showcases, maybe go into the theater or starting your own journey. We have the each one teach one principle in hip-hop. That means I never say that I'm a teacher. It's always back and forth. I love coaching people on the streets. Yeah, and we also focus on jams, so organizing battles and get-togethers, theater, creating pieces. So yeah, really trying to go all around as long as the heart is dance and movement, yeah.
Hey, last minutes of tonight. Good evening, my name is Avi. You can find me online, Sarod by Avi. The Sarod is referring to the instrument, of course. A little bit about the instrument for the people who didn't hear or see it yet before today. It's a lute, so an Indian stringed instrument. Derives from the Persian robab, like 500-600 years ago. And through all the trade routes and such, it got involved in Indian classical music. So if you Google the robab, it looks totally different than the sarod looks now. It consists of 23 strings. I do not play all of them, but I have to be tuning all of them. So 15 resonant strings for the technical people or the musicians here. The resonating strings, that was before the time we had any amplification, electrical amplification. 3 percussionistic strings, of rhythmic strings, which you hear all the time, like the high notes. That's for me my metronome, which I learned to let go by working together with these two guys. And 5 melodic strings, which I glide, slide, and do my things on. It's quite a rhythmical instrument as well. That's I think I let you hear a little bit of it. I got to know my brother Shailesh here through my big brother Raj, which I've been fortunate to work with the last couple of months now, 1.5 years, maybe almost 2 years. So these guys have been taking me on a journey because I'm coming from a really classical corner. I've been mixing different genres with my music through my platform Imperceptible Art, but like developing myself in a broader kind of way, letting go of all the cliché standards and what you guys were talking about. That's been part of my journey by guidance of these guys. So I've been fortunate to share this tonight with you as well, and hope you liked it. And if not, tell me.
I think what I really liked about what you said, Avi, was, I mean, the two things which really struck me was one, that reminding us that the rabab itself underwent all these, maybe we can call them creolizations, mutations, different things happen to every cultural form. Musical instruments are no less part of that process. And then you come with the sarod, which people think, oh, is this classical Indian instrument, but it has its own story of travels and morphings. And I really enjoyed, how you also talked about losing the metronome with our friends who, in their own ways, I think you have a very strong control of the metronome, but you play with it. One of the things that I always, again, two things that struck me about Shailesh's dance when I first saw it many years ago was or even the choreography of Lalla Rook that you did, which I think everybody in the Netherlands should see. Please fund it, someone, so that we can have more La La Rue performances. It should be part of the Dutch history, I think, for children. Anyway, it is so moving, the story of the ship that took the first Indians to Suriname, but the way Shailesh does it with his crew is totally mind-blowing and different. So there I saw one section where the metronome came very strongly in the dancing, and it made me feel this is the metronome of the factory and the plantation, you know, modern times. But then the dancers, their bodies, just like you were doing today, was moving in between that time and splitting that time, creating a new space-time to enter and make your own presence felt. And within the tremble, in which the body moves an infinite number of times within the metronome, for me is another very important part of your repertoire. And I requested you to do something with the tremble.
Yeah, I tried. It was hard to get in directly because I was cold.
No, it wasn't. There was a lot of trembling in there.
The combination, it's okay. The combination with Raj, that what you, I don't know, did you guys rehearse it before that, or just happen?
I mean, we've performed before, and I recognized. I was happy that I recognized some parts that they played. So I was like, yes, I know some of these snippets. But then again, even when we work, we really only work on our anchor points and having our roots of development, and then we go.
Well, you did.
But today for me was a total surprise, and I was already, when I was just listening to Raj performing, I was like, I want to jump in. I have to get in this. I know this song. I want to get in. And then our eyes met, and he was like, come in, and I said, okay, let's go.
I know we have a minute before we are supposed to take everybody upstairs, because the idea of commensality we took seriously, and we are very grateful Frame of Frame actually provides the food, which is again Surinamese meets Indonesian meets Amsterdam. I don't know. It's Warung food, you know. So that's what we have here. Before we go there, though. We have 5 more minutes. That's fantastic. Thank you. Because I want to ask Antonio, how did you feel when you see your fellow comrades in the dance and music space performing? I mean, and also the Caribbean space, which Panama is part of in its own way, I guess, stretching the Caribbean up to the central part of America. But how did you, I would love to know your responses.
Sorry, I don't know if I comprehend completely the question. You're talking about how I feel about Raj music.
Simple.
When you saw Raj and Shailesh together.
Yeah, it seems, for me, we work in Gujarat, so we travel to Mumbai all the time, once a year. The last 5 years, I've been so many times in Mumbai. That's the hub before we travel to North. And every time we try to stay in a different place of Mumbai. And I saw many times, I didn't saw this instrument, but I saw many performances and music. So I'm kind of spoiled in that way. So for me, I'm very curious about what you were telling about this performance that you did with about how Hindi people went to Suriname. That we should be in contact, because that is something that will be very engaging for the project what we're doing. Electric Dove Station is a project where we're trying to see that creolization of that connection to the Americas, to India and the Caribbean and Africa. When I first arrived in India, we were looking for Sindhis. There are black people who live in Gujarat and in Mumbai. The people who were there before slavery. And they even play instruments who look like capoeira instruments from Brazil. That's how we arrived in Gujarat. We didn't found the community where we were working, and we end working in Ajagpur doing prints. So for me, the whole idea of the music and the creolization of the music and the way they perform with the dancer is something I implement a lot of things that we multidisciplinarity in our work, in the work that we're doing. Printing Ayarak prints, doing research on patterns, doing research on music, and now also researching on the music history back from blues music to punk and house to drum and bass, jungle and new electro and pop music. So for us, the whole idea of creolization of music is something that is very implemented in the project Electric Dove Station. and the idea of indigo, the idea of working with indigo. And something I wanted to say, when we start working with indigo in plantations in the United States, blues started on indigo plantations. And this confirmed it. And so the idea of indigo is so much connected to the idea of music. And blues come from the Delta blues from Mali. And apparently Delta and Mali, there was a connection of a road through India. Certain songs, certain sonic intervention of music are connected. I heard that once, but a sitar player told me, because the sitar was sounding almost like a blues music, certain rhythms. So there is a certain moment in history that all the instruments were connected.
Absolutely. That's very important.
We're gonna have food.
We're gonna have food. So we have 2 minutes left. So I think that's the best way.
May I just say something?
Please.
I know Karin Lashmin is here, who is a poet that I really admire a lot. So in the last minute, perhaps you might want to just express one of your poems for us.
Can I bring you the mic? Come on, thinnai. Come on, our thinnai. Sit. Come and sit on a thinnai. That's the way we do.
No, Francio, this is something you do always, put me on the spot. As kind of incognito. Thank you so much. Yes, I like the idea of the thinnai, so sitting here. I will try a poem. It will be in Dutch, and then I will translate maybe. Or jouw ogen spreken een andere taal van wat ik hoor en jij niet zegt. Foto's zonder herinneringen. Ik zou ze opnieuw willen kleuren. Zonder ogen, zonder mond. Voor een klank die zuiver is. It's a very short poem and it says that that the eyes that we see are not always speaking the words that we hear. And I would like to color it again for a sound that will be much more original than what I hear. So that's a little bit.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. And thank you for the inspiration because, yes.
Thank you. So this is how we end up with poetry on the thinnai Kreyol, spontaneously, the way I like and we like.
I don't know whether we have time or whether you have your poem ready.
Oh, no, I didn't get ready.
I did, so you have to do it.
Well, I only
2
remember.
minutes? Yeah?
Because this is a poem, the poem I'm thinking, or the poems I'm thinking about were actually inspired in there's a cycle of poems that emerged last year from Ari, and they were very, I think, connected with the moment that Antonio came onto the thinnai, and we had an event with Antonio and others, which we called Weaving Rhythms of Blue. And Ari came up, spontaneously with some poems, and then they begat more poems. And they are getting published this December in an Italian journal called Il Tolomeo in English and Italian translations. So it's all going to be in the public domain soon, but I think at least one of the poems from that cycle would be very appropriate because Antonio is here.
Yeah, so this is a poem about pariahs, untouchable and Dalit. Because I came with the concept, the poetic concept, like Edouard Glissant came with, or Chamoiseau. I came with a new concept, poetical concept of negro-dalitalité. So I'm putting the black struggle and Dalit struggle together, and I claim the negritude from Césaire and the Dalit from Ambedkar. And in those days, the instrument, which is called pare means in Tamil means to speak, but then suddenly it became a part of mark of intouchability. So the poem goes like this: Dan danaka, danaka daka, dandanake, danakadake. Qui joue mon molam? Dandanake, danakadake. Qui annonce à ma place? Poussez-vous, éloignez-vous, écartez-vous. Il arrive là, le paria, l'intouchable, l'hors caste. Son ombre est une souillure et son âme abjecte. Même l'air se pollue sur son passage. Mon cœur meurtri se déchire comme une peau trop tendue. Do you have it in English? No.
But I can look at it and translate it. Because I've translated it, I remember it.
Yeah, but I don't get it. Never mind, I'll let you finish.
No. If you want to finish it, then I can
Okay,
translate it.
lovely. Okay, cool. So, jadis, je chantais le héros sur les champs de bataille. Je réveillais les dieux dans leur sommeil. Je célébrais l'amour dans les mariages. Je louais le nouveau-né. Hélas, me voilà condamné à accompagner la mort et à faire danser les cadavres. Paréen, maudit, gueux, exclu. Ces mots sont devenus les cendres de cette société qui a brûlé mon âme. Paréen, je suis né, mais paréen, je ne mourrai. Mon molom s'insurge dans l'archipel des fragments et fait résonner l'allegro pareil sur le thinnai créole. Dandanake. Danakadake. Dandanake. Danakadake. So this is exactly my poetical concept of negro-dalitalité.
I did the translation, but I didn't have it. We are so improvised, I don't have it. And I don't have my glasses, so I can't find it on my phone very easily. But I'll just give the gist of it to people who obviously maybe don't know, didn't get the French. So obviously we got the kind of the percussive part in the beginning, which is an allusion or vocalization of the parai drum, which is the parai molam, and that's what you say, who plays my molam and who's announcing my arrival. And then the poem goes into these very strong phrases of untouchability, move away, don't touch him, get away from me, because he's coming, look, watch out, that's the untouchable, the parai. The person who's the outcast. Even his shadow is a stain, and his abject soul, even the air is polluted by the passage through that. So this is the kind of unspeakable crime, I would say, of indicating or declaring that certain human beings are subhuman because they belong, quote unquote, to this particular group. So the poem is obviously asserting itself by going through these reminders of what untouchability means, and then it reminds us of what the parai drum did in the past, announcing heroes, announcing births, announcing marriages. So it had a ritualistic purpose in society, but that itself, including the ritual of the funerary rituals, which as we know are extremely important for society as well. Despite all that, or because of that, this kind of what Derrida and Plateau would call the pharmacon effect, the poison and the cure of society is concentrated in the same figure, which is, in this case, the person who plays on the parai drum. And the poem, as all poems, I think, have the power to do, kind of rises out of those depths of, could be despair, but goes into another space, which we already had entered with the joyous and assertive percussive vocables, and it continues with that, and it says that my drum, my molam, is going to surge out of the archipelago of fragments. And the archipelago of fragments is a phrase that really spontaneously came out of the work that Ari and I do to, again, connote the space of commingling, even though the histories may not be contiguous, but there are points of connect. So this is the archipelago of fragments where the parai molam resounds and surges out of, and it makes the allegro parai resonate or sound out on the thinnai creole. And the thinnai creole, of course, is where we all are. So we are together in that, I hope. And the Allegro Parai is a concept we also developed, thinking about the Parai, which is conjoined to alegria or joy in order to resist. So when we have the work of the body, I think we can find a resistance in the joy that the body can produce. But it's not a solitary joy, because that's kind of, against the point. I think it's the collectivity that's important for Allegropolitics, a term that I have developed and which Ari helps me think through. But everybody sitting here on the thinnai Creole together, including the work of Shailesh, made me think about it, Raj, and so on. So, I'm really so touched that we can all be here together. Thank you to everyone for making this possible. Do you want to have the last word? Or shall we say thank you to our hosts, and thank you to our friends who performed, and the audience. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
What's that?
Now, shall we, Evie,
Because everything is being taken
tell
out.
us what to do next?
The whole system.
Yes, everyone can move upstairs.